race fans, this edition of Through the Gears presented by Frontstretch. I'm your host, Tino Pattigno, and I can't wait to get back into the NASCAR betting, winning, racing, and oh yeah, road course action this weekend at Watkins Glen. But before we do just that, I gotta give a special shout out to those who commented on the last video. If you guys want a special shout out, all you have to do is comment down below on this post, and I'll be sure to give you one here. Marcus, shout out to Crystal Sparkle, Kyle B8, and Kai Fried. Appreciate everyone who tuned in, gave it a like, and commented on the video. It means a lot to me, and I'm super excited for a lot of things heading into this weekend, so stay tuned and find out just what they are, as this is going to be a special race weekend. So without further ado, let's go through the gears. Before we get into everything that we have to offer for Watkins Glen this weekend, we can't do so without rewinding back to last weekend for the Atlanta recap. Now, a couple of things that were positive. The Fords were fast. We knew that right out of the gate. Our picks in Ryan Blaney, Austin Cindric were right there. Brad Keselowski didn't show as much speed as I had wanted him to in this one. Christopher Bell also was in a position to win this race. That was who was on our betting card, and unfortunately, it was the only Team Penske driver that we didn't bet on, Joey Logano, who got the victory. To me, I just didn't see Joey executing the way he did there at the end, and, kudos to them for doing so late in that race. Late race caution as well. Things sort of worked in their favor, but ultimately, I am glad we were on the Ford mindset, took Ford for the outright winner manufacturer prop there also. So if you guys did follow that and cashed, I'm happy we did so there with Joey Logano. And we knew Team Penske was going to be fast, and we knew the Fords were going to be hot. But in this playoffs right now, there's a lot of things we need to talk about, because not only was Joey Logano fast, but Ryan Blaney, as to be expected, and Austin Cindric. Yes, people talk about him being a super speedway driver these days now, when he's been in the Cup Series, that has been his strong suit. But the fact that right now, in the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs, Austin Cindric is 7th place right now, plus 27 to the good. And this is, I don't think, a situation that they had seen themselves being in and being able to advance to the next round of this playoffs. So to me, if Austin Cindric is able to keep working and keep battling and keep putting himself in good positions late in the going of these races, we could see him make a deep playoff run. And for everyone else at Atlanta, well, Kyle Larson, it was not going well for him, and at least it was until he crashed into the wall. Really hard hit for Larson, just overcorrected like he said, and major impact there as he was running inside the top 5. And that's just something we talked about, though, with Kyle Larson at super speedways. He's already a driver where he's racing so aggressively, but he's always either winning the race or wrecking out, it seems. And that is exactly what happened at Atlanta. And when we go to super speedway racing, although it didn't showcase itself as much as a super speedway as it did earlier on this year, it just really showed that, to me, Kyle Larson is just heightened in the fact that when he's racing aggressively like that to win or wreck, the wrecking aspect of it gets heightened whenever we go to super speedways, as it does for all drivers. Another driver that stood out to me was Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin with an interesting strategy that we don't normally see out of the 11 car when it comes to super speedways. Denny Hamlin is always a driver we see leading laps, dictating the lines, being able to have control over the field. Well, they didn't have a good start to the weekend, qualifying towards the back, and that's where he stayed throughout the race. Denny said on his podcast earlier this week that it was a strategical play. The fact that he does not have many finishes inside the top 10 at super speedways as of recently, because he also gets involved in wrecks every single time he's been able to go up front, win stages, lead laps, but not have the finishing results to prove of it. He said, well, if I can go out and get 20 points, that might be worth right around in the back, avoid the wrecks, and be able to capitalize there at the end. Well, unfortunately for the 11 car, there wasn't many wrecks up until the end, and they were involved in it. So it just was a little bit weird to see him doing that. And right now, with that strategy being had, Denny Hamlin now sees himself in 11th place, +2 from the cut line, heading to Watkins Glen this weekend. Things are going to get very interesting, and maybe a little too interesting for them if they do not go out and have a strong run at the Glen. So that's a little bit of the playoff picture going into Watkins Glen. We're going to be turning left and right in this one. Super excited to be road course racing, especially in the playoffs at such an awesome track like Watkins Glen. The first thing that stands out to me when we talk about Watkins Glen is track position. It's so key in this race. And when I'm saying track position, I'm not only saying track position throughout the race, but starting position has been absolutely crucial. Well, Tino, what do you mean by that? Here's a stat for you. In 16 of the last 20 races at this track, the winner has started inside of the top 6. You heard that correctly. And there was one time where they started in 7th. So my point is, in 16 of the last 20 races, with the winner starting inside the top 6, it is going to be huge to capitalize on guys before practice and qualifying to see if we can get some higher odds, because those closing line value for these drivers will go down tremendously. There's a bunch of guys on the board that we will talk about in the odds breakdown in this next segment that have great value, that if they do qualify, like I mentioned, even inside the top 10, but really inside that top 6 to 7 threshold, could be huge in order for us to bet on them and add them to our card earlier now in the week. Now, another thing too, if you don't want to do that, if you don't want to take the risk, if you don't know who is going to be fast in qualifying, even after we do talk about it, this can be a huge reassurance for you to see, okay, a driver qualified inside the top 5. I was iffy on them. I was on the fence about them before. Now it's time to lock in after qualifying. That's something I've noticed. That's something I recognized. And with the stats being what they are, you can't really argue with the facts. Another thing that's important to note when we head to Watkins Glen, Hendrick Motorsports and their dominance. It's been absolutely insane to see. In the last 5 Watkins Glen races, we have Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, and William Byron last year winning. Now, on top of all of that, we're talking about Watkins Glen, we're talking about Chevy, we're talking about road courses, we're talking about Hendrick Motorsports, and there's a reason for it. This season, in the 3 road course and street course races thus far, we've seen William Byron win at Coda, Kyle Larson win at Sonoma, Alex Bowman win the Chicago street race. Well, the only driver that's left is Chase Elliott. Can Chase Elliott capitalize this weekend and bring home the Hendrick Motorsports sweep at road courses, at least thus far? We have the Roval left as well, but still, if a Hendrick Motorsport driver can win here at Watkins Glen and continue their dominance there, that can be something important to note. Chevy as a whole, when we have guys like SVG, AJ Allmendinger racing in this one, it just adds a whole nother element into the mix. And it's not all Chevy. We have a familiar face and name in the mix as well. Juan Pablo Montoya is back. He'll be in the 2311 Racing number 50 car this weekend. Can he make some noise? I'm not expecting him to go out and win, but maybe for a little prop play, we can make some money there. So with Watkins Glen, understanding the fact that also playoff drivers and their current situations. We just covered in the Atlanta recap the playoff picture, where guys are at, some key names around the bubble. Well, who's going to be aggressive in this one? Could a driver like Christopher Bell, 3rd place, who's plus 40 to the good, go out and be aggressive at Watkins Glen, try to lock himself into the next round, and then go to Bristol and double up at a track he's equally as good at? What about Tyler Reddick? Tyler Reddick is a road course racer. Could we see him capitalize on his 4th place position in the NASCAR standings right now for the playoffs? These are just things we need to keep in mind. And we talked about the drivers that are above the cut line. Well, how about Brad Keselowski, -1 in 13th? MTJ, -19 in 15th. That is going to be huge to see if those drivers below the cut line can rise up to the occasion now that Watkins Glen is in the playoffs for this season. And I talked about those guys. I talked about the veterans. But what about Ty Gibbs? Ty Gibbs raced really strongly here at Watkins Glen last season. He's +1 to the cut line in 12th place in the playoff standings. Can he have a strong run in this one? Can he potentially go out and win this race? Stay tuned. Let's check out the odds in this one. Now that we know how important qualifying is and the teams and manufacturers that's been dominating this racetrack, let's check out how the odds sort of reflect everything that we know thus far heading into it. Well, Kyle Larson is the favorite. At +650 on some books, he opened at +600, and we won't see him, most likely, unless he has a bad run in qualifying, go anywhere less than that. I think that's going to be huge to note in this one, because although he is the favorite, although he's not a flashy play, +625, that could be a number that gets uglier after he qualifies inside the top 5 in this one. Important to note, in Kyle Larson's last 8 races at this track, he's qualified in the top 6. So he's right in line with everything we need to know. And the guys that win the race, Ryan Stevens and everyone that puts the great data together there, we talked in the NASCAR betting preview show. Kyle Larson, for him, and his true data ranks at this track, ranks number 1. So he is the favorite, but for a reason, and it could be a valuable one if Kyle Larson wants to go back and sort of get redemption for what happened last week at Atlanta. Now I'm going to pause this odds breakdown for just a second here, as I have 2 important announcements. First off, this one's going to be very special, as Watkins Glen is my home track and my favorite track out of them all. I'm super excited to say that I will be there at the race this weekend. If any of you guys are going to be there around the track or in the area, let me know. I'll be wearing the gold jacket. I'll be looking exactly like how I do in the show in real life in person. So let me know in the comments below if you'll be there, if you like Watkins Glen, if you don't, but I will be there. It's one of my favorite tracks. I'm so excited to be back there, and I'll be there maybe talking to some drivers, definitely talking to fans and team members, getting some awesome content for you guys as well. If you have any content you want to see, let me know in the comments below. I will be sure to get that for you guys there, and be sure you're tuned in at Tino, Pattigno, as I'll be posting it all throughout the weekend, keeping you guys updated, seeing what the drivers have to say, and everyone. Maybe I'll even run around the whole track itself. It'll be an awesome time. I'm super excited to be back there, and that is something that I'm so ready to do and locked and loaded for, to provide you guys with some great content, as Watkins Glen is the best track. Let's go. Next, there was a tire test here. There is going to be a new tire compound at this track. Now, this is something we can also filter into the prep. Now, this is something we don't know how it's going to affect the drivers, if any, or tremendously, like how we saw at Bristol. The fact of the matter, everything what I've been hearing in the garage, or at least on social media, is that it won't be something too crazy. But at the same time, we didn't think Bristol would be what it was, and that was incredible racing in terms of passing and lead changes and way too much tire fall off. But is that what we could see during the course of a run that would be doubled fall off from what we saw last season? That is something that's important to note. There were a few drivers that went to the test. We'll talk about them in the odds breakdown and see if they have a better advantage going into this one. So without further ado, let's go back to the odds breakdown. Thank you guys for letting me have that special announcement. Kyle Larson's Hendrick Motorsports teammate and William Byron is plus 750 in this one. Makes sense, but Willie B hasn't really been that strong as of late. So I'm really looking forward to seeing him potentially get back to their winning ways in this one at Watkins Glen as they did last season. He had a decent day at Atlanta, being now 5th in the NASCAR playoff standings, plus 33 to the good. But we just haven't seen him leading laps and winning races as they were as strong doing in the first half of the year. Now, plus 750, that's decent value for Willie B, but we also see Shane Van Gisbergen in this one. He'll be racing in the 16 car, plus 750 for SVG as well. I wouldn't be surprised if SVG put out a strong qualifying lap in this one, and those odds went from plus 750 to plus 500 or even plus 400. So that's a driver that is really good in qualifying. We need to keep an eye on in this one. Other drivers down the list, Tyler Reddick at plus 825 and Chase Elliott at plus 1,000. Chase Elliott's a driver I need to really point out in this one, because I think he's going to have a strong run in this race. And the fact that Chase Elliott has won 2 poles here at this track, he has 4 out of the 6 last races here, starting inside of the top 6 and in that top 4 positioning there as well. So to me, Chase Elliott is a driver we need to think about heading into this race. Christopher Bell plus 1,400, Ty Gibbs plus 1,400 as well. And when I talk about closing line value, those are the 2 drivers that stand out to me the most. I think they could potentially go out. Ty Gibbs has been a great qualifier, I feel like, all season long. So if he does go out and have another strong run, he could capitalize at this racetrack more than others that we've seen so far this season. AJ Allmendinger will be racing in this one. He's plus 1,500 to get the win. I like Allmendinger. You have to in any road course, but the thing that kind of scares me is he'll be in the 13 car rather than the 16, since SVG will be racing as well. Michael McDowell at plus 1,600, great road course racer as well. Haven't really seen much speed out of them. I mean, we saw him starting up front in Atlanta and everything like that, but that's a super speedway road courses. I do expect him to be up towards the front, but can he get the win is the question. So the odds are fair. I think they represent a good value for McDowell. Martin Truex Jr., we talked about his playoff positioning, plus 1,700 for Truex. Can they get out of the slump of the playoffs that we've seen now back-to-back seasons? Time will tell. Hopefully they come out strong in this one and he can keep moving on in his last full-time season. Denny Hamlin, terrible run like we talked about in Atlanta. He follows Kyle Busch, who's plus 2,200 in this one. Denny Hamlin plus 2,500. Then we see Chris Buescher plus 3,000. I think that's awesome value for Buescher, who is a driver that is always strong at road courses, had that streak of top 10s and 11s going all throughout. It seems like the last 12 road courses or more. Daniel Suarez plus 3,000. He's been hot. Another driver I need to make a note of, being in ninth place in the NASCAR Cup Series playoff standings is awesome for that team after a strong race in Atlanta. Now you get to go to a road course where they can be really strong at as well. Alex Bowman plus 3,500, Austin Cindric plus 4,000, Blaney as well, and same thing with Logano. All the Team Penske guys are right in the line there. We see Chastain, Briscoe plus 8,000. He's going to need a strong run after getting collected in that Kyle Larson wreck this past weekend at Atlanta. Brad Keselowski is looking at 110 to 1 to win this one. I know it's been a little bit since Brad's had success at road courses, but to see those numbers there are pretty astronomical for, an RFK driver who's also in the playoffs. Last one I need to mention here, as all the other drivers are just way too high of a price to even look at in terms of their value, is Juan Pablo Montoya. JPM is coming in at 60 to 1 to win this race. I don't see him winning it. I don't see that happening there because of how long it's been since he's been in the Cup car. It's going to be such a curve for him in this one. And that 50 car just really hasn't been the best this season. Maybe not as good as we would expect it to be, with it being under the 2311 roof. So, hey, Juan Pablo Montoya, maybe we can fit you in for some prop bets later on. Now it's time for the outright winners in this one. This is the moment you've all been waiting for here in this one, to see who we're picking to win the race at Watkins Glen. And if you don't already have a little bit of a mindset thinking about them after everything we said for the odds breakdown, I think I kind of provided a little bit of the groundwork to sort of give away some of the picks there, because Kyle Larson is going to be the first one. With everything we talked about and how important qualifying is, and with how strong Hendrick Motorsports has been on road courses this season, Kyle Larson being one of them, winning at Sonoma, I don't hate the value. Plus 625 we can find on BetMGM. Looking at the other sports books as well, plus 600 for DraftKings, plus 550 for Caesars. So anywhere in that range, although it's not flashy, doesn't really excite us, and he is the favorite, he could be the winner. Like that I know sometimes we see the plus 1,000s, 14 to 1s, 20 to 1s, but I just got a feeling that this is going to be Kyle Larson's weekend because of this. And because of how strong he's been in qualifying, that's what really stood out to me the most. 16 in the last 20 races. The winners come inside the top 6. In the last 8 races, Kyle Larson starts inside the top 6. Can't really beat that. I think Larson is going to go out and have a strong run this weekend and make up for what happened in Atlanta. Chase Elliott's next up to make the Hendrick Motorsports sweep at road courses. Plus 1,000 is great value on Caesars. BetMGM has him at plus 900. I would still take that. And I think anything that happens after qualifying, these odds are going to go down. That I'm picking drivers that are great at qualifying because it matters most at this track. And when they do start up front, the sports books are going to know the data. They're going to understand the odds. They'll watch this video and see everything we're talking about. But my point is, these odds are going to go down. We'll see closing line value with Chase Elliott. If he wins the pole, the plus 1,000 is going to go down to plus 600. And so we want to capitalize on that for a driver like Larson and a driver like Elliott, who's proven us that they can do it in qualifying and sort of run up there in front in the races. I have 2 Toyota drivers, and Toyota drivers have been really strong on road courses as well. I feel like they've been the guys that would lead laps and lead stages. Although the Chevys have won this season, Toyota was really strong last season. I believe they led 76% of all road courses there. So to me, Christopher Bell's one driver that stands out to me when I think of Toyota and when I think of road course. Plus 1,400. Love that value for C-Bell. He's always a driver that seems to take it up just another notch when it comes playoff time. He's clutch. He's able to consistently make the championship 4, as we've seen in back-to-back years now. And I think with him winning at Phoenix, he's got a really good shot to win the championship as well. So plus 1,400 when we go to the Glen. There's some people that think he could be racing for points, and I understand. Think about it from the other point of view, where if he knows he's going to go out and potentially have a strong run at Bristol, yeah, anything can happen, and they already have that points cushion right now, might as well go out and try to get the win here. If you already lock yourself in, you can get bonus points and sort of double up at Bristol next weekend. To me, that's what I would do if I was Christopher Bell, so I'll be betting on him in this one. And his teammate, Ty Gibbs. I know. Could Ty Gibbs get his first career win in the playoffs? Pressure's on. Well, I think he could do it. He was in position to do it last week in Atlanta. Ultimately, wasn't able to get it done. Wasn't able to finish, where he was running in and leading laps in that race. But Ty Gibbs, 14 to 1 to win this one, and he's been a strong qualifier throughout the season. At Watkins Glen specifically, he ran really well here last year. Other thing that's important to note, he is racing in the Xfinity Series. Now, those cars are not comparable to the Cups, but I think it makes a little bit of benefit for some extra reps at the same racetrack. So to me, hey, if you want to do a Christopher Bell and Ty Gibbs, special here with the two Toyotas and see their closing line value drop after qualifying and after practice when these guys go out and have a strong run, they could be the two guys that you want to bet on in order to find that closing line value. Notable road course racers that I feel like it's important to note their odds once again. They're not on my outright winners card just yet, but they could be after qualifying, so stay tuned for any potential updates. But that'd be AJ Allmendinger plus 1,500, SVG at plus 750, and then another driver that I saw was Chris Buescher at plus 3,000. I just feel like those three guys present us with good value that we could potentially add if they go out and really dominate in both practice and qualifying. They're not on my card just yet, but keep them in mind, keep them aware, keep your eye on them, and they could be someone that you may want to add to yours. For some prop bets, I only have a few in this one because I want to see how the drivers and how much the tire compound really matters. Also, after qualifying, we may be able to find a driver that is starting in the back of the pack and could present us with some value to get inside the top 10 or top 5 here. But I do have some good ones for you guys. I think Chris Buescher is plus 140 to get a top 10. We talked about how much he's been able to do so and be consistently right there around that top 10 margin for these road course races. He's plus 140 on Caesars, like I mentioned, and I think Chris Buescher has a good shot of doing that. Juan Pablo Montoya, if you want to bet and have some fun, I think JPM's the guy to do it with. At plus 190 on BetMGM, it's good value. I would want a little bit more, but I think, if you want to have some fun, we could see him potentially get a top 10 because he is, let's keep in mind, he was racing an IndyCar, so it's not like he's been out of a car completely, but it will be a little bit of a challenge for him to get back up. And if he can stay out of trouble, I could see him getting a potential top 10 in this one. Daniel Suarez at plus 175 on Caesars. I think that's good value for a driver that's hot right now. Daniel Suarez has been going on a tear ever since we came back, and ever since he was leading laps at Richmond and everything like that. He's been running really strong and finishing inside the top 10. I think he can do so at Watkins Glen this weekend. And Austin Cindric at plus 190. Austin Cindric at plus 190 is an interesting one. He may not be running towards the front that much in this race, but he will have an advantage going into it after going to the tire test earlier this season and being the driver that knows more about this tire compound than other drivers in the field. So that could present him with a benefit in this one. We don't know how much, and we don't know if it will affect the race that much at all, really. But we'll have to wait and see. I think right now, plus 190 is decent value for a driver like Cindric who may have that advantage like we talked about. It's presented drivers with advantages before. We saw the All-Star race with Joey Logano and Ty Gibbs winning, and they were the two drivers at the test there. But Austin Cindric in this one, I don't think it'll be as drastic as of a tire compound change like we've seen at Bristol or North Wilkesboro, where those guys had a really big advantage. But Austin Cindric, I think at plus 190, could be a play in this one for a top 10. Now, for my favorite plays to close things out, well, it's going to be Ty Gibbs. Now, it's not just going to be Ty Gibbs to win the Cup Series race at 14-1. If you parlay that on DraftKings or any other sportsbook that lets you parlays winners from one day to the next, well, we go Ty Gibbs in Xfinity, pair him with the Cup Series, we're looking at 60-1 odds for Ty Gibbs to sweep the weekend at Watkins Glen and lock himself into the next round of the NASCAR playoffs. I love that value. I think he's going to come out really strong in the Xfinity Series race. He should have won this race potentially last season. He got knocked out of the way by Sam Mayer. He's going to be looking out and going for revenge there. So Ty Gibbs, hey, 60-1 to win both races. It presents us with the most value, and that's what makes it my favorite play. And that'll do it for this edition of Through the Gears. I hope you all enjoyed it. Be sure to leave a like and comment down below who you think is going to win the race this weekend. Playoffs are making things so much more exciting, and we're going to my favorite track in Watkins Glen. I'm super excited to be there making content for you guys, so let me know what you guys want to see. Any of the drivers you want me to talk to, I'm going to be all around the track wearing the gold jacket and having a great time. Be sure to stay tuned in to the Stock Car Scoop on the Frontstretch Podcast Network to get all the insight info you need to know from the race weekend after everything unfolds. Be sure to follow me at Tino, Pattigno, to see all the content from me throughout the races. I'll be posting updates to my betting card, anything else you guys need to know, and some fun content all throughout the weekend. I'll see you guys next week as we go through the gears.